So we're going to talk about a little possible cheating scandal at UFC 284 in the main event. Obviously, me and you have talked about this main event these
Oh
past few
yeah.
weeks a ton, and I wish we didn't have to talk about it for these reasons, whether it be true or not. So we'll just get right into it. UFC lightweight champion Islam Makhachev has been, I don't want to say the victim, but he's been accused of quite the interesting thing
Well,
by Dan
yeah,
Hooker.
that's the thing. I'm just gonna jump in real quick.
No,
That's
yeah.
the thing is whether it's true or not. Because
Well, here,
we
let me say what he got accused of first for anybody who doesn't know, but then I'm going to let you go. So, Islam Makhachev, for those who don't know, obviously he had a little bit, I guess, of a rough weight cut. He had to strip down completely to make 155 pounds in fighting Alexander Volkanovski. And Volk's longtime teammate, Dan Hooker, he accused Islam Makhachev of cheating by using an IV to rehydrate after the weigh-ins. And there's some interesting rules on that I'll get into in a second, but I'll let you kind of go with what you were about to say. You said,
yeah. So like, I was saying stuff because I just had my reaction to it, seeing all the Dan Hooker tweets and all that. It really just came off as like just odd. Like, why would just this one morning? Like, obviously after the fight happens, but like was I don't know what like my thought was like what is like Dan Hooker even thinking? Like you would think like he would probably say some things like this like either right after the fight happens or even like during the fight. If Volk was like any precarious position that Volkanovski is in, he would just like have that urge to be like, oh, I can't stand this dude Makhachev like doing what he's doing anymore. So then it just came off to me as like, well, Dan Hooker just seems like okay, you know, his boy just like he suffered a loss to Islam, and now he has to watch one of his Australian brothers lose as well to Makhachev, and
I
now
think
it's like,
Hooker's from New Zealand. He might be from New Zealand, but same
yeah,
region.
yeah,
They'll get
same
mad at you
region.
for that, dude. I remember when Izzy was fighting Whitaker, and they were like, I think someone asked a question about that, and he got pretty heated. He was like, "Hey man, we're not the same," but and he just wanted to do that so the champ doesn't get mad at you.
But yeah, I mean, I guess like the point is like there's a relationship there between them,
Yeah,
and so what I was thinking
longtime
is just
teammates.
yeah, exactly. So what I was thinking is like, well, Dan Hooker just seems like you know really like salty right now. Like with he's coming like he's hitting with
You
some
think he's a
pretty
little
hard
bitter?
accusations, and like right now we don't have anything to back it up. So when I see people responding to it and just going with it just because okay Dan Hooker I guess like a fighter like someone with just you know
He has a name in the
yeah
sport, like a prominent
exactly
one at that.
people see that and then they just run with it and just like oh now they know everything too and like yeah Islam's a cheater like screw all just because they're not
All of a sudden,
in the
everybody's an
sport.
expert on the rules.
Yeah,
Like,
so I just had a response like to that and it was just like like clearly like you understand it's an accusation, but here you are still making out Islam Makhachev to be like the worst person ever, and like you just like all because of your like just whatever your personal just
your opinion
hate,
on the
yeah,
fight
personal
itself, because
opinion and
people
stuff.
were mad that at the scorecards, obviously initially, because they thought that Volkanovski deserved to win the fight, whether it be just because it was close and he was at home, or if they actually thought that he won 3 of the rounds. But I think that people now are a little bit just salty that Islam won, maybe including Dan Hooker. My whole thing, and I think I said this when it first came out, is that like I still believe in innocent until proven guilty, and Dan Hooker said what he said, and I think there is something to it considering that like he might have information that we're not privy to, but at the same time, until you say it and you do prove it, you can't really go out here saying Islam deserves to be stripped, blah blah blah, or there needs to be an immediate rematch because of this. I think that you need to let like things go as they may turn out. And it's weird because a lot of weird things have happened since Dan Hooker has said this. Hooker obviously hasn't provided any proof whatsoever, kind of like you said. But at the same time, there's been like some weird speculation in the videos, or not videos, in the pictures, like pre-fight of Islam, like posing with the belt and stuff. There was like the shots that you could see like a needle mark in his arm. I don't know what you guys think of that, but I'm just reporting it. And the other thing that I kind of wanted to mention was what Ali Abdelaziz tweeted, like kind of completely out of nowhere. He
Well, yeah, and then like
yeah.
now yeah, with all what we're about to talk about now, like it just made it just made like I guess like me look like just me just like not even trying to take sides, just like let me like just trying to just be like just fair and like objective, because people are just automatically like, oh, Dan Hooker said it, so like I have to agree with it, and like he's
Yeah,
right,
because it's a really
and then
serious like
yeah, it's
accusation, and
that's the point I
Islam
was
even
trying to
was saying,
exactly. That's the point I was pretty much like trying to get at, but like this didn't help like my case whatsoever, and so like like still like this is like a major because this is obviously like major because we're gonna talk about like possible consequences too, which like you know
if true,
yeah,
you've got to say that
if
if
it
true.
gets to that, then like this could be a catastrophe of a situation for UFC. So like yeah, but you can go on about it. That's just what I cuz like when I like the whole I just Ali just said he always just has to find his, just find a way to just make something just look bad. Look the way, he thinks he's making it look a certain type of way, but to everybody else, the public eye is just like you're not doing what you really think you're doing.
Yeah, he he said some interesting stuff. He put out a tweet basically saying that he was going to expose everybody at a
Yeah.
later date, but then said that any fighter under the UFC banner can take 2 to 3 liters of IV, which for those who don't know is 2 to 3,000 milliliters, as long as it's done by a nurse or professional. And he later deleted the tweet because apparently the rules in I don't know if let me read this like because it is very confusing even to me, and like I've read this article like a bunch of times and I've read a couple articles on it. um, Ariel Helwani had said that he deleted the tweet because someone, I would think, this is a quote, he deleted it because someone, I would think, told him he was incriminating himself with this tweet. You can't take 2 to 3 liters by a professional or not. It's 100 milliliters per 12 hours. And obviously, like I just said, 2 to 3 liters is 2 to 3,000 milliliters. And 12 hours is obviously half a day. So that's 200 milliliters in a day. So if this were true, he'd be taking like more than 1,000 over like
Yeah,
the limit.
it's fucking crazy.
And obviously, like I said, it's innocent until proven guilty. Hooker hasn't provided any proof of it to anybody, like a commission member or a media member. So you can't really say much of from what Dan Hooker said. But then Ali Abdelaziz, if this is true, he kind of shot himself in the foot with this one. But we don't really know.
Yeah,
That's the big thing. But the thing is, it's like every commission has their own like weird rule set on it. But then some of the commissions let the UFC and USADA implement their own rules. But it's a whole cluster of different things. Let me just kind of read it like a little bit. So let me just kind of go from in the UFC and USADA handbook. This is according to Brett Okamoto, obviously from ESPN. Fighters are permitted to use IV and as long as it's, quote, determined to be medically justified and within the standard of care by a licensed physician and administered by a licensed medical professional. And he added, if an athlete is administered an IV of more than the permitted 100 milliliters, as long as it's done by a licensed professional, it's not a violation. So that kind of contradicts it a little because Ariel is still right, but there's apparently an exception in this rule because you know how this is. There's the people on Instagram and Twitter who you mentioned who hate Islam right off the bat.
Yeah.
But then you have people, obviously like journalists, who are going to go into the rule books and figure it out what it actually says. And it seems like even the rule books are a little bit cloudy on it because apparently in Australia, you're not allowed to use IV therapy at all. So if you're going by those rules, then
Oh
if
man.
Islam used any IV, then he's blatantly against the rules in Australia, but not by USADA, which is weird, isn't it? Like,
Yeah, which like you know, it does leave you to think like you know, yeah, like maybe he did feel like okay, I'm gonna bend the rules a little bit because like okay, one thing might say one this thing and then the bigger picture in USADA says the other. So you know
it's just such a bizarre situation to me.
it is because
And I don't really know, like, because there's so many different places we can go with it. You just mentioned before, like, possible
and then
consequences.
I want to
But
like another thing to know too is like what they were actually fighting at on like during the fight in terms of weight.
I could try and look that up. I'm not sure if it'll, because that stuff's hard to find. California does a good job at kind of like releasing that information,
He's like,
but
yeah, like, I don't think there was really like. I think like now with hindsight being 2020, like there was nothing stopping this fight from happening.
I can't
In
find anything.
Australia. So
I mean, the rumor is about Islam that he weighs roughly 190 pounds outside of fight camp. So you'd have to imagine that he probably at least gets to like 170, 175 with rehydration. And if you're using an IV, that's probably even more. It's just a weird thing. Because Hooker, like, you wonder, like you said, if he's salty about just what has happened, like, with his own fight with Islam. But then I say to myself, well, if he was just mad, then he would have said that months ago. But then you wonder, did he do it that time if he did? But if this is true, I don't know. What do you think the consequence should be if it is true that he broke the rules? Like, not, let's say he used the IV, but it was above what he was supposed to, or it was in some way that's not compliant even with USADA's rules. Like, you get what I'm saying? Because
yeah,
obviously in Australia it's completely against the rules by their commission, but USADA has like the weird leniency with it.
man, it sucks. But like, I guess what should happen, but like I don't like not even like you shouldn't like no real like fight fan should want this to happen. But like a
Right.
suspension, like could like really be like looming like in the air, and it's like. If you have to suspend like your lightweight champion, like
That'd
man,
be
like
bad,
just
especially after the whole Oliveira thing with missing weight, and you already had a vacant title for a while,
oh
and it would definitely be and after one of the best fights in my opinion in
yeah,
history,
yeah, that too.
it would definitely suck to see that. But at the same time, I kind of agree with you, by the way, in terms of like if this is true and he really did cheat, uh, a suspension's warranted, and obviously being stripped of the belt would be an afterthought at that point. Like, but
Like I think just like speaking, but like just speak about just like a real fight fan that like actually really appreciated like that fight, and the pay per view. Like we all want to see a rematch, I would think.
yeah, I still want to see it, and like some people are talking about it immediately. I don't know if I do want to see it immediately, but I'm definitely not opposed
Because
to
like
it.
yeah, I think it's just like a guy like Volk who has to get caught up in all this too. Like that's not fair, he's the one who had to come up and wait, and then obviously take on one of the most just an absolute machine who at the top of the lightweight division. Like that's not all that fair to him too, and put on the fight that he did too. Like
Yeah,
I think he definitely deserves that rematch.
and let me say this too, in Islam's defense, the Australian, it's not like exactly the Australian. So let me read it right. The Western Australia Combat Sports Commission, they said that there's no proof that they have that Islam did this. And they encouraged anybody who has any to come forward and tell them about it so they could report like whatever they need to report. So as of this recording, it's obviously Sunday. It's February 19th right now. So if by the time we release this video there's more, oh well. But right now there's no proof, and because of that, I think that the likely outcome is that nothing happens because I don't expect proof to surface. If I'm being honest.
It's just like yeah, it's just really like odd. I think on Dan Hooker's part, like I don't know like I just want to know like what exactly prompted him to just be like that morning and just be like I have to out this
Yeah,
guy.
and he called him many choice words.
Yeah, to
Cheating
say the
dog was the
least.
nicest thing he said to him. So it's definitely rough. I mean, you're not calling someone
At first, people like I think people were like able to make out who he was talking about, but he didn't give a name, and then he deliberately said
yeah,
Islam is a cheat, and then that's when, like okay,
yeah,
like we have a
a
situation
lot
on our
more than
hands.
that too.
Yeah. And then so yeah, like just came off to me like at the time. It's like man, like come on, Dan, like like I think like I would think like you're better than this. You're not actually like this upset about you just don't actually like hate this guy this much. But
I like Dan Hooker a lot, which makes it tough for me to like think about it because I don't want to believe that he would just lie about it. I
Yeah.
want to say maybe, if anything, it's a big miscommunication. Maybe he heard something from a bad source and he just got mad in the moment. But at the same time, I kind of agree with Islam defending himself and saying that Dan Hooker and people who are accusing him of this should be held accountable, because it is like a lofty accusation if it's not true, and you're really smearing the guy's name if this isn't true, because now you have all these fans who've made up their mind that Islam's a cheater when there's really no basis to prove that he cheated besides maybe a couple pictures that have like the
Yeah.
marks on his elbow or on his arm. So I don't know. I personally, like I said, for me, it's innocent until proven guilty with everything, and this included. So until there's
Yeah,
more, I'm
but
definitely not going to talk about it as much.
so
But
I guess just real quick, maybe we could talk about like I don't even like is there even like a kind of solution to all this? Because it's like like if if this is like as big of a as big of an accusation as it is, then like
so
it
you're
can't
saying
be
like
in
even if nothing comes of it from like Islam cheating, like you're saying if it is proven false, do you think like even it could go the other way?
yeah,
I
pretty
I don't know.
much.
I
Like,
don't think any. Honestly, I truly believe that nothing's going to come of it because that's just how it is with this sport. When you have weekly fights for the promotion, things just get swept under the rug. And we talked about it with the Dana White stuff, and even like the negative reception to Power Slap when all that stuff happened. That's kind of out the window. People still hate Power Slap, but for different reasons now. Now people are just seeing people get knocked out cold and not doing well. Then did you see that one guy too? He tested positive for cocaine.
oh, what the?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's kind of nuts. I'm like,
that's probably PED for that.
real good look for Power Slap, that's for sure. But I think that's definitely a wrap for the topic that we obviously
Yeah,
got into in the
what
beginning
a
of the video.
crazy situation, man.
Yeah, which thing? The guy on coke and Power Slap or the Islam
Oh yeah,
IV thing?
but
'Cause I think
like
both are pretty crazy.
just to participate in Power Slap is crazy enough. So the cocaine thing doesn't even like phase me that much. But this situation, like at least at the time when I saw that Dan Hooker tweets and stuff, was like whoa,
Call me
like,
off guard.
yeah,
That's really the
it
best
was
way to
like,
put it.
this is a pretty like strong accusation. So, yeah, that's it, man. Like we don't want any cheaters. Like we don't want anybody to get their names smeared or anything. Like we just
Yeah.
respect and appreciate what these guys do, each and every time they're in there, and yeah, like
Yeah.
we're happy we get to talk about it and give them
Yeah.
that praise that they deserve. So, yeah.
Yeah. Like
We're
I
not
said,
trying. We're not gonna take sides and stuff. Like,
no.
we're only
Before
whatever's put in front of us. Like that's it. Like that's what we can talk about. Like because we
Yeah.
don't know anything more than the next guy who thinks he knows
I know.
everything.
Like I said, once this all happened, everybody all of a sudden became an expert on the UFC rule book, and then half of them were wrong because they didn't know about that exception. Because that was my biggest thing. I was like, I cannot go on a podcast and talk about this without at least reading what the rule is, because there's so many people in the comment section, even people on YouTube, who are just straight calling Islam a cheater based off what they assume the rule is, and they're not completely wrong.
Yeah.
But there's some weird exceptions in there, and like I said, it even confused me, and I know we talked about it before we even recorded it, and it was confusing to the both of us, and because it's a little bit convoluted. That's how I'd put it.
It really is.
So until we hear something further, which we might not, this will definitely be the last that we talk about it. It just became such a big story this week that I wanted to kind of touch on it at least a little bit. But I think we did a good job of that. And like I said, my whole thing is it's innocent until proven guilty. Dan Hooker accused him of something pretty serious, and there's really been no concrete proof that Islam has done any of this. So
Yeah. Well, I mean,
until there is, he's the champ, as
Yeah.
legitimate as it gets.
let's just hope it doesn't do any stalling for the lightweight division.
I agree.
Because, oh man.
As
if
a
it
fight
has to
fan,
get-
I agree.
Yeah, really. If it has to get to that point, dude, that would be an absolute that would just suck so bad.
Yeah, it'd be a travesty and definitely a dark point
Yeah.
in the sport. But that's all we have for you guys. So stay tuned for more videos. Like this one if you enjoyed it, and be sure to subscribe. Wow, a little tired. But peace out, guys.
Feel just like a superstar. Doing all these drugs, I don't think I'm gonna see tomorrow. Living fast, shoot it.